That our thoughts are with our co-host Meghan McCain. She's not here today. She's with her family. Her father's recovering, and we look forward to seeing her soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And wish the senator the best. I'm a Navy guy. He's a Navy legend, and we want him to make a swift recovery.
He's a fighter. I know Meghan reached out yesterday just to kind of let me know what was going on, and then I reached out on Twitter to the senator, and things are going to be okay, but it's always, always helpful to have those prayers and love. So we send ours out to her and her family.
Absolutely. They are tough. Yeah. All right. Well, Senate Republicans delaying a vote that was expected this week on their health care bill as Senator McCain recovers. The score expected from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office today, postponed as well. But Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price does not seem too bothered by the delay.
Do you think they're going to be able to get this done, Dr. Price?
Well, I do because the senators know that what's out there right now isn't working. In terms of the Medicaid system, you've got a third of the physicians in this country who ought to be caring for Medicaid patients who aren't. That's not because they've forgotten how to take care of those patients. It's because of the system, again, that may work for government, may work for insurance, but it's not working for patients.
But one GOP holdout, Senator Rand Paul, explains why he's still a no.
The real problem we have is, we won 4 elections on repealing Obamacare, but this bill keeps most of the Obamacare taxes, keeps most of the regulations, keeps most of the subsidies, and creates something that Republicans have never been for, and that's a giant insurance bailout super fund. I still think the entire 52 of us could get together on a more narrow, clean repeal, and I think it still can be done.
Senator Paul also sees the delay as an advantage to buy time, but the leader of the Senate Democrats, New York's Chuck Schumer, believes all the time in the world will not help Republicans.
Time is not the problem in the present health care bill. The problem is the substance. It slashes Medicaid, which has become something that helps middle-class New Yorkers, millions of them literally, and millions of Americans.
Congressman DeSantis with us today. So where does all of this go, Congressman?
Well, look, we've had a party that's run multiple election cycles saying if you put us in power, we are going to repeal and replace this law. It's damaging the middle class by raising premiums. And so you got to put up or shut up. And I'm old-fashioned. I think if you actually run on policies, you get elected, then you do those policies. But we seem to be having a difficult time of following through with our word.
What's the sticking point?
I think the sticking point has been, and we saw the struggle in the House, now you're seeing in the Senate, is people say, oh, you've had 7 years to come up with a replacement. That's not really the problem. The problem is we don't have agreement on repeal. There's some people that said they want to repeal, then they get there and say, well, you repeal it, but don't repeal the subsidies or the regulations. Well, okay, well, once you start saying that, then you're not really repealing it.
So, but if that's the case with where Senator Rand Paul is, Karl Rove had a good question this morning. If it's not perfect, can you still go forward? I mean, maybe you don't get a complete rip the Band-Aid off, but does that mean the doctors in the room aren't going to do surgery on the patient?
So that's in the House. Basically, that was the calculation we made, is this is not a perfect bill. I would rather have a partial repeal than no repeal at all. So many of us voted for the bill out of the House. And so Paul is saying do exactly what we said. My view is if it's not possible to do 100%, if I can get 75%, I'll take that.
Do you think you can convince him?
No.
See, I disagree with both of the sound bites that we heard coming in, and I think that's part of the problem is everybody's spinning the message the way they want to present it. I mean, which I guess is politics, but Chuck Schumer is saying that we're cutting into Medicaid. Everyone knows that's a complete lie. We are not cutting Medicaid by passing this bill. All it would do is slow the growth over time, and Rand Paul is wrong. We're not creating a huge super fund for insurance companies. We're trying to figure out a way to pay for the most expensive people who use a ton of health care, who aren't going to pay for it themselves. And if they had no insurance, they would go into the hospital, and then those hospitals would take that as a loss on their taxes, and taxpayers would pay for it. So the bottom line, no matter how painful it is there's a bunch of people out there we all have to pay for, and we have to figure out how to do it efficiently.
Well, I think that the issue there, I mean, 2 things. One, on the Medicaid getting slashed. I think even though objectively
we're slowing massive growth.
Right. Okay. So we are slowing the growth, which does mean that less people will have Medicaid, right? I mean, That's the fact.
There are a
So
lot
they're
of
going to be
people on
15
Medicaid
million.
who
Oh, I
shouldn't be on
completely
there
agree with you.
now.
I think we should be means testing all of our entitlements, quite frankly, which doesn't make me popular in my party. But that's where the sticking point is there, because if we do slow the growth of it, we're going to end up with, I think the estimate is 15 million less people who have Medicaid today who won't have it in 10 years. And as to the point about why repeal and replace is so difficult now and why it works so well in elections, Obamacare used to be unpopular. Remember when approval rating was in the 30s, and now it's over 50% because Americans are so concerned about losing their health care because of the GOP.
I'll let Congress
Well,
respond to that.
You've had 7 months of nonstop media shilling for Obamacare. So the CNN is not bringing out people who've been harmed by Obamacare. That's not, so the narrative is different. But I would say Schumer just said that Medicaid's helping middle-class New Yorkers. That's not what Medicaid is supposed to do. It's supposed to help poor kids, elderly, disabled. You start saying it's a middle-class entitlement, it will go bankrupt very quickly. So I say, and it actually ends up hurting the people who really need it.
With all due respect, I mean, there are media members, and we well know it, that should stand up and do more. But this does fall in the hands and on the shoulders of all of those in Congress right now. I mean, we have been waiting all these years as an American public to see something better. And, you know, you didn't get any help from an outgoing president who told his party not to help Republicans get to the end game, which was to give us all something better. We knew it was broken. He tried to fix it by executive order more than 24 times.
And this bill has in many ways been an orphan because the Democrats, the media don't like it. Conservatives like Rand Paul say, hey, this isn't enough. So you don't have people out making the case for it. And I think that's part of the reason why it's not really been a good public relations
I just realized
effort.
the congressman wore his cowboy boots today.
I love that.
Yeah. All right.
Get it.
All right.
I still have on my ankle boot.
Moving on, President Trump touting the Senate GOP's health care bill in his weekly address, vowing that the Obamacare nightmare will soon be over.
The Senate health care bill stops the Obamacare disaster, expands choice, and drives down costs. So it would be good for the federal government. It'll cost you less money by a lot, and it'll be a much better plan. You can't do better than that.
Senator Rand Paul cautioning the president against overselling the GOP plan.
I would caution about overselling what's going to happen. I've been involved with healthcare for 20 years as a physician. It was in terrible shape before Obamacare. It got worse under Obamacare. The Republican plan admits that it will continue. They just say, hey, guys, we're going to subsidize it. We're going to dump billions of dollars into the insurance companies and say, please charge less and try to counteract the death spiral. But the Republican plan doesn't fix the death spiral of Obamacare. It simply subsidizes it.
Does Rand Paul go too far on that, or do you agree with him?
I think he's got a point. I mean, if you look at the regulatory structure of Obamacare, it's a perverse system. That's why insurers are fleeing. That's why healthy people are dropping out. So you have to fix the underlying system. And I think both the House and Senate bills, they don't fully fix it. They basically say, well, states can wave out of it and try to create solvent markets. But if you don't have solvent insurance markets, then a lot of the other discussions we have are academic. So I thought a full clean repeal was the easiest way to do that. So I do agree with Rand to a certain extent. And I would caution against overselling as well, because there's a lot of problems with our healthcare system. We're not solving the problem of third-party payers getting in between patients and doctors. And as long as you have that, you're not going to be able to really rein in the cost of healthcare.
I agree with you 100%. The third-party payer thing is a big problem, but some of the things it's doing, sending so much back to the states, makes sense. They know how to spend the money on their people. And also the idea of letting people buy just the plan that they want and not having to buy all the junk. The healthy people already weren't paying in, so let's get them off to the side on insurance that they're paying for, that they're using appropriately, and let's focus whatever revenue that we have in that pile on the people who are using a ton of health care. I mean, I don't know.
And there's an expansion of health savings accounts too, so people will be able to have low premium, high deductibles.
Yeah.
So some of the routine care will be done doctor-patient directly with tax-free dollars. I think that will help actually bring some market forces into health care.
What if the states, though, won't cover pre-existing conditions, for instance, that the national plans do right now? This was a major concern with round one of the bill. People like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, a lot of the more centrist Republicans saying absolutely not. We can't scale back on pre-existing conditions. I'm also curious as to
I would be shocked if that happened.
But
So
the language...
who's going to approve that waiver? Who would approve that waiver?
The truth about where we are, too, and why that matters, and what Melissa's saying, is that we're not at the point where the senators are ready to vote on this bill yet. We're trying to still get to the debate, as I understand it. So that's something that would come up, as I would understand it, as a deal breaker on the floor.
But also,
if anybody tried to float no pre-existing conditions.
The way the House bill did it was say you have to do pre-existing conditions if you do the waiver, but you can do it differently than Obamacare does pre-existing
But that
conditions.
does allow for certain states to undercut the mission of full coverage for people who need it. I mean, there are certain states who are going to cover certain things as pre-existing conditions and others that aren't, and I think that that's dangerous. I also would like to add, where is insurance across state lines? I mean, that was a key promise in both the House and the Senate that would be taken up, and it's in neither bill. And you want free markets
like that as much as
they don't. No one likes me.
Right. I'm confused by that.
I'm like the least popular Democrat.
So here's one thing we haven't talked about, though, and that's the Congressional Budget Office score, and that's been delayed as well. And the CBO had said last week, we want more information from the White House. I'm still not completely clear.
They want to do further analysis.
Told exactly what they want. But I know Representative Jim Jordan is one who's pushing for using part of that August recess, if it spreads to the House, to talk about things like the CBO and the meaning of it and trying to make it more relevant. What is the journey of the CBO?
Yeah, well, one, we should cancel the August recess and work through it. I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
I can hear your phone.
No one will like you anymore either.
But to the CBO, I mean, it's wrong about a lot of different things. It's supposed to be a budget office. Getting into health care coverage numbers, all these things, it just doesn't do a very good job of that. I mean, the Obamacare estimates, it's not that people are going to lose coverage they have as much as they're predicting massive increases going forward under Obamacare. So they say there's going to be 18 million people on the exchanges next year. You know how many there are now? 10 million, and it's been declining every year. There's no way in heck it's going to be 18 million.
But there's a huge hurdle for Republicans to jump over here. You just mentioned Susan Collins, who she just said 8 to 10 Republican senators have serious concerns about this bill.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, some of them support Obamacare, at least in parts. That's the reason. Others, like Rand Paul, wanted to do more. But you got to come together and get 50 votes. I just don't see how you can. Yeah, exactly.
Or talk to Democrats. I mean, there are centrist and moderate Democrats who are in red states, like Claire McCaskill and Heidi Heitkamp, and they need help getting reelected as well. And guess what? They want their people to have good, affordable health care.
Are there hands in the air to talk?
Heidi Heitkamp showed up for interviews.
About what
all right, we'll leave it there. President Trump is now firing back, defending his son Donald Jr.'s meeting with a Russian lawyer during the campaign. Was that meeting just standard politics, or is time for those who attended to testify, as a top lawmaker is now demanding? Plus, why some have fired FBI Director James Comey's memos of his private conversations with President Trump may be one step closer to being made public. And, of course, we'll always remind you, after the show, you can join our live chat by clicking the Overnight tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered, or go to the facebook.com/outnumberedfnc page. And, of course, you can tweet us during the show. Harris is already on her phone.
I'm tweeting to Megan, saying we love you, Megan.
See you after the show.
Well, the White House is now stepping up its defense amid the firestorm over Donald Trump Jr. and other Trump campaign advisors meeting with a Russian attorney last June during the 2016 campaign. The president tweeted just today, most politicians would have gone to a meeting like the one Don Jr. attended in order to get info on an opponent. That's politics. And a lawyer for the president says there was nothing unlawful about what took place.
Nothing in that meeting that would have taken place, even if it was about the topic of an opposition research paper from a Russian lawyer, is illegal or a violation of the law. And by the way, I am not the only lawyer, and you know this, Chris. Most lawyers, many, I'd say a vast majority of the lawyers that you've interviewed and others have interviewed on your network and other networks have acknowledged that the meeting itself and those proposed discussions would not have been a violation of the law.
He's right about that. But the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence, Mark Warner, says Trump Jr.'s emails about that meeting revealed evidence of a Russian government effort to undermine the Clinton campaign, and he wants answers.
Very troubling, and obviously moves our whole investigation to another level. I want to hear from everyone in that meeting and get their version of the story, as well as I think we may find out there may have been other meetings as well. We don't know that yet.
In another interview, the senator seemed to hedge on whether the meeting shows collusion.
I've learned that there is a wide breadth between what is called in the espionage business a useful idiot and full-fledged collusion. Where all these conversations fall, that will be something we'll try to reach some conclusions on.
It's like we've been saying, evidence is the problem for Democrats. It's just an itchy subject for them. Alan Dershowitz, we all know that name, right? Okay, very famous Democrat attorney, was on with Judge Jeanine over the weekend, and he was talking about how Democrats are unconstitutional in their argument against Donald Trump Jr. Full-throated, this was not illegal what he did, and this would be like equating information to money in terms of the exchange of valuable things, and he said, you don't do that. Words don't get that. And he is a staunch liberal. Your thoughts?
Well, as a former prosecutor, there's no crime taking that meeting. There's just not. And even when talking about collusion, you look in the federal statutes, the only time collusion is an offense is an antitrust. If you look for a federal criminal collusion offense for no, what they have to prove is a conspiracy, which means there needs to be an underlying crime. And simply taking a meeting is certainly not a criminal offense. And the Democrats are so up in arms about this, as if the Clintons would not have taken that meeting. The Democrats, they're shocked that there's gambling going on in this casino.
Well, we'll talk more about the Clintons a little bit later, because we can talk about the money versus the words in that instance, and actual valuable things being exchanged. But, real quickly before we move on, I want to press in with you on one point. Do you feel that those in your party are doing enough to come to the aid of this president on a whole host of issues, as he's been under attack by the media, many of them for months?
No, I don't. I mean, we're doing more on the Russia stuff than we did to investigate the Clinton Foundation during last Congress, and there was a lot of evidence that really needed to be vetted. We never sent one subpoena. We never did one hearing on that, and now you have all this, and I think there are not enough Republicans who are just standing up and supporting the White House on this.
Well, and the other problem is we're learning who was actually present during this meeting, and that kind of is turning into a story on its own. But I'll throw this at you because it is something that you hear from the left quite often as we discuss this. Is it possible that the president didn't really know about this meeting?
Sure, because you're in a presidential campaign. You know how many things are going on in a given day? Even me as a sitting member of Congress on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I don't remember necessarily who I met with last week. So it's just the way you go. You go from meeting to meeting, you do this, you're taking phone calls, you're doing all these different things. It's not a criminal offense.
No.
It is not an
because
offense.
From what I understand from Dershowitz and others who are saying now about constitutionality, we as free citizens, we in the media have the right, and a candidate would have the right to go out and get information no matter what the source and come back and use it as opposition. If that changes, I mean, if they want to change the law, I guess we could watch that happen. Melissa?
I mean, one thing I think is going on is we're all kind of, I'm afraid, getting an education in how campaigns actually work. And maybe we didn't know about all the different people behind the scenes that try and go in and have influence or whatever else. All I know is I think that most people in America are really sick of hearing about Russia. And they would like to hear about health care and tax reform, and they would like everyone to get back to work. And I'm not saying it's a non-issue and that it doesn't deserve attention at some point or whatever, but the dominance of it over the actual work that needs to be done is embarrassing.
Well, I agree with that point, and the American public would also like the President of the United States of America to get off his Twitter account. And he continues to re-up this issue, even as over 70% of Americans say that his Twitter account hurt. Yes, the polls were right at the election too. They said she'd win by 2 points. That's what she won by. Donald Trump gets on. It is true, Jessica.
Newsflash, she didn't win.
Oh my God, I didn't know. No, I meant she won the popular vote by 2 points. The fact that the president went on Twitter this morning to talk about Don Jr. when he's amping up for this Make America Great Week or whatever he's calling it about U.S. manufacturing, and I know we're going to talk about that later, shows how distracted he is and focused on little things that shouldn't matter right now when you have a health care bill that's in triage, when you need to get tax reform done.
I totally disagree. That's how he keeps his people following him.
But his people are dwindling. It's just for the base.
That's not true. Everybody who's successful on social media has a very specific crowd following them. They understand the psychology of the people following them, and they feed them every day. He is great at feeding Twitter and keeping his people following him. Everybody who doesn't like him hates his Twitter account. That's how that works when you're really popular and polarizing in social media.
All right. Okay.
Drop the mic.
Okay, I got hit by all shards of that mic that got dropped. Okay. Speaking of Russia and the investigation, the top Democrat on the Senate Intel Committee also refuses to say if the FBI Director James Comey's emails on his contacts with the president had any evidence of obstruction, while President Trump's attorney says there is no indication the special counsel is even investigating the president. And around we go where it all goes next. President Trump on hypocrisy. Watch. Accusing the mainstream media of focusing only on him and his team while ignoring Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. Yes, we're going to go there. Whether there is a double standard, we will debate.
Former FBI Director James Comey staying in the spotlight as the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee says his memos about conversations with President Trump should be made public, or at least as many of them as possible. Listen.
My hope is that that the public will get to see at least some of them. Some of them are classified. There's also been a strange activity where some of them have been classified after the fact. But I think it's important to the fullest extent possible that the public get a chance to review all this information.
Senator Warner also refusing to say if the memos revealed any evidence of obstruction, adding that special counsel Robert Mueller will decide whether or not any crime was committed. Meanwhile, a member of the president's legal team says there is no indication that Mueller is even investigating the president. Watch this.
Nothing has changed since not only when I was here, but nothing has changed since when James Comey told the president he was not under investigation on 3 different occasions, and we have no notification of any investigation going on the president of the United States.
Congressman, I am not the least bit surprised by this. Now I feel like I always call him Chatty Cathy, James Comey, because I've never seen an FBI director who chatted so much in my life. But it feels like it was all a ramp up to get excited about a book deal. I mean, now I feel like we finally know what all this was about.
Well, he has been somebody that's very concerned about his image. He did that with the Hillary Clinton case. He really did that handling the Russia stuff where he was inviting speculation that president was under investigation while in privately telling the president you're not under investigation. But I think he may have some issues to answer for with these memos. He admitted incredibly under oath that he leaked the memos in order to trigger a special counsel. Now we have reports there may have been classified information in some of his memos. So the question is, was he leaking any classified info in order to trigger a special counsel? That'd be a major deal if true.
I think maybe he was just drumming up interest in these memos that we're only going to see in the book. What do you think, Jessica? I mean, this is
I
the
don't
best
think so.
book rollout of all time.
Yes, I think the bidding is this week or next week. But I don't think it was all about the book. I mean, James Comey is someone who people on both sides of the aisle have issues with, starting with what happened last summer when no one agreed with what he did, and then finishing with that October letter, that surprise that I think was kind of the final nail in the coffin for Hillary Clinton, who I do know lost the election. But what I would say is that I think that Bob Mueller, who has gotten praise from people, Republicans and Democrats, is out there and he's doing his job and he's doing it quietly and to the point. I think that there is
quietly. Yes, that's different. No, I know that's different from James Comey.
It is a little different. I mean, James Comey, until about a year ago, no one knew about him. He just only got loud the last year, and I think that he does have a lot to atone for in terms of what he's done on both sides there. But I do think the investigation is hopefully rolling on in a bipartisan way, and I think that Mark Warner is...
Well, there's a congressman here. Do you believe that it is?
Well, the Comey or the Mueller investigation, he's hired all the Democrats to be prosecutors. It's like he subcontracted out the legal department at the DNC.
So you don't think there's
They're Hillary donors. None of them are Republican donors. And I'm not saying if you donate to a Democrat, you can't be a good prosecutor. But isn't it odd? You get 14 prosecutors, and they're all either Democrat donors big time or no political. There's no Republicans that are on the...
You need to go on the record that one of them did donate to Congressman Jason Chaffetz,
who is a big Democrat, and I know the person that got that donation is a friend of mine.
Small donation.
That guy's a Democrat. He is a big Hillary supporter.
Wow. I did have a Chatty Cathy doll growing up. He pulled her hair. Did you have one of those? You know, and I think we had a little bit of the sound of him talking about his book deal. I don't know if anybody's necessarily surprised by this, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a Twitter account. I mean, this is the director of the FBI. This isn't just someone in government. Even the president has a Twitter account, but he's not the director of the investigative arm of government, right? I mean, he's not part of that investigative arm.
The president also has something to promote, his agenda. James Comey is the director of the FBI. Why in the world?
What would his agenda be?
What's he trying to promote while he's tweeting?
It's very odd.
Yeah. Jessica, you want to say something? Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like he was a prolific Twitterer. There was actually, you know, a kind of, I think it was a secret account that actually got on our...
Are you defending James Comey's social? Okay,
I mean,
interesting.
It's not about his social media use. I just think that this is someone who had a long career in public service, that there are a lot of people who think quite highly of, and the last year has definitely tarnished that. But I don't think that, you know, floating a theory that he is leaking classified information to get those memos out there, what he gave to the law professor, is responsible or reasonable at this point. I think the FBI director knows what's classified and what isn't, and I don't think he ever would have done that.
It's even less about that than the fact of whether or not it was government property that he was sharing these memos.
Work product, executive privilege.
So how much can he really put in a book? Accusations of a double standard now rocking the Russia investigation. President Trump is criticizing the mainstream media for its coverage of his son's meeting with an attorney reportedly linked to the Kremlin. Linked being a word that no one has actually proven yet. And wondering why reporters are ignoring Hillary Clinton's emails. The president tweeted this: Hillary Clinton can illegally get the questions to debate and delete 33,000 emails, but my son Don is being scorned by the fake news media. Meanwhile, the president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, which you've seen a couple times this hour, is defending Donald Trump Jr., comparing his meeting to another where a DNC consultant reportedly exchanged information with members of the Ukrainian government. Watch.
Compared to, for instance, the situation with the Ukrainians, the DNC, and the Clinton campaign.
The moment that there's an FBI investigation or Senate and House Intelligence Committee investigations into Ukraine and the DNC and the Clinton campaign, I'm happy to discuss it. But that's not what's going on right now. And I know
isn't that interesting that there isn't one? But go ahead.
That consultant denied any wrongdoing, as does the Clinton camp, and House Intel Committee ranking member Adam Schiff blasted the comparison.
Well, it would be problematic to get any kind of support from a foreign government. But again, I think to compare the two is a bit like comparing bank robbery with writing a check with insufficient funds. Both appropriate money from the bank improperly, but a very different degree of seriousness and involvement, in this case, by a foreign government.
I had not really heard you chuckle until that. What's funny?
Well, I mean, look, it's a double standard here in terms of what is the media, what are they really after versus things that they don't really care to look after. And there were a lot of things with foreign contacts with the Clintons, not just with the Ukrainian stuff. They actually had a lot of contacts with Russia, the government, Bill Clinton getting $500,000 for a 20-minute speech. Right. But yet none of that stuff was really ever vetted. So I think the president gets frustrated, and I think understandably so, that the standard that's applied to him seems to be a different standard than is applied to everybody
What do you
else.
make of his strategy to combat that? He's obviously very vocal against the media.
Well, I'll tell you, the people that I talk to back home, they've had it with the media. They don't trust the media. They view the media as being agenda-driven. I think they've always had that view to a certain extent, but the moment Donald Trump won the presidency, it's been constant. He had no honeymoon period at all, not even one day after the election. It's been nonstop, nonstop, nonstop.
But he also didn't take a break himself from the onslaught of attacks. And I would argue, since again I am aware that Hillary Clinton lost the election, that she actually lost because of those emails, because of the media coverage about her being a liar, about the private server. Those scandals, by the way, broken by the Washington Post and the New York Times, two outlets that the president criticizes constantly for being fake and in the pocket of liberals. So I don't think that's fair. There was an amazing Gallup study actually about the words associated with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and with her it was liar,
I remember,
and emails, and with him it was speech and president and immigration, not even illegal immigration. And this is after he said things about the criminals and rapists comment and calling for a total ban of Muslims coming to the United States, which I realize he has revised. So to make the argument that Donald Trump is the only one getting the short end of the media stick here about their scandals is ridiculous.
But the question is, with Hillary,
she's not the president.
But during the campaign, was it fair to talk about her emails? And I would say, of course it's fair, because she did what was alleged.
Was it fair then to talk about his foundation? I mean, what David Farrenhold did? I mean, the right was going crazy about it.
So
it was going
I want to
too
make
far.
sure we got this straight on the record. You're blaming her emails or the coverage about them, not actually the existence of them being on a top
Oh, no, I think all that, listen, I have a laundry list. I don't have it hanging on my wall, but I think about it all the time, the reasons that she lost. First and foremost is her. It was an incredibly flawed candidate. She should have gone gone to Wisconsin instead of Arizona. There are things that we could have done. But to say that the media coverage of those scandals revolving around her emails and that private server did not contribute to her loss is patently false.
I think, can I go back to the soundbite that we heard on the way in here where they were talking about one is like writing a bad check and the other is like bank robbery or whatever? I had to laugh because it's the Clintons that did the bank robbery. I mean, the entire business plan of the Clinton Foundation is foreign influence over the U.S. and the trading of money. I mean, it's so straightforward. It's so plain. When you look at the deal with Etihad Airways, you're talking about the speech he gave for 20 minutes. They give him $500,000. Right. All of a sudden, in the next week, Etihad is approved to fly into the U.S. I mean, it's like that. Comparing that to what's going on now, it is like robbing a bank.
And they've had a tough time raising money since she lost.
Nobody should be, to be clear, nobody should be dealing with foreign governments, but come on.
All right, the White House is now launching a multi-week Made in America campaign to refocus attention on the president's agenda. Well, that's interesting. How will it work? And is the president's team doing enough to hammer home the issues that got him elected?
He's just made in America.
The White House kicking off a 3-week Made in America campaign, part of an effort to refocus attention on President Trump's agenda. The president will be highlighting locally made products around the country, including Marine One. And this may be a helpful strategy, as recent polling shows a strong majority of voters approve of the America First message Mr. Trump ran on. Meantime, the president's slamming a new poll, showing his approval dropping since the spring, tweeting, quote, "The ABC Washington Post poll, even though almost 40% is not bad at this time, was just about the most inaccurate poll around election time." But another new poll from NBC and the Wall Street Journal painting a different picture, showing the president's job approval at 50% in the counties that fueled his 2016 victory. Jessica, he won. I'm teasing.
I'm so glad you reminded me today. I've been having such a good time in Hillary land.
We're being hard.
Jessica hallucinated that Hillary Clinton won.
It's a common syndrome amongst Democrats. Why wouldn't he tweet about the good poll? That's what doesn't make sense to me. They both came out around the same time. Tweet about the fact that you're over 50% of the counties that won. We all know it's an electoral college win, right? That matters here, not the popular vote. So focus on that. I think the focus on manufacturing, bringing jobs back here for this week is a great thing. Energy week. Have a week and focus on it. I'm just wondering, though, when Ivanka, the president, Melania, they all manufacture their goods abroad, why haven't you brought those home? Why are you still manufacturing in China if this is so important to your agenda?
Congressman, I'll let you take that.
Well, I think that the polling right now, to me, is not really that significant. What's going to be significant is a year out, 2 years out, are the American people seeing tangible benefits. I think you're already starting to see some economically, the markets. I think small businesses have had a sense of relief because they don't feel a regulatory onslaught, and they are
We don't have to think. We get the small business surveys, and there is huge optimism in the small business environment right now. CEO optimism is way up when you look at large corporations. And then if you're going to use an indicator, you look at the stock market sitting at record highs. The president, can he tout that? Is that because of his rolling back of regulations and pushing his agenda?
It is, but he has to deliver on it. I mean, he has to deliver on keeping regulation down, on lowering taxes, on keeping the economy moving. But I think the larger point is that the polls and all that kind of stuff and the messaging and who's saying what and what you're tweeting counts before the election. Then after the election, all that matters are results and how people feel. So it doesn't matter what the polls say. It doesn't matter what he's tweeting. I think it's just a function of if your household is doing better the next time it comes to vote, you're going to vote for the person who is in, and he better do it.
And by the way, though, on this, his polling was worse on Election Day when he won the presidency than it is now.
But let's talk Made in America, because that is what he campaigned on. That was his promise. And here we are in the first of a three-week stint of this Made in America. this is what he promised voters, Harris.
No, absolutely. And I want to now take the question that you put out on the floor about why certain products with the Trump family may have been made outside the United States. One of the things that the president has told us time and time again is that he wanted to make the atmosphere here in America one that would attract businesses to do more and more of that. He, in my understanding, not estimation, is that by making America great again in this aspect, even he would do that. I mean, he said as a business person, he was tasked with doing what worked for his businesses. But can you make it a better environment in America? And that's what he's trying to do.
I agree with you. And I think
we see him, I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
I hope so. That would be great. I mean, I am for easing regulatory.
That would be helpful.
Yes. I mean, I'm not a betting person, but if I did, I would bet on America. I just find it curious that someone who is now the president of the United States of America, who I understand loves to cut deals, and that's what he's good at, wouldn't have even taken a little financial hit, and him and his family, when you are sitting there on Pennsylvania Avenue to bring those jobs home so that you can show up at a carrier plant and say, not only am I saving 1,000 jobs, I brought back my own jobs.
Well, it's interesting because Democrats want to have it both ways. They want to have no hands from the White House, nobody having hands on their businesses, yet you want him to change his businesses from inside the White House.
He's the president of the United States of America
who
wore...
Great point.
I'm confused by that.
All right, Democrats, of course, hoping to take back the House and the Senate in the midterms. Why one big-name Democratic strategist says Dems can probably forget about retaking the Senate. We hash it out on the couch next.
More Outnumbered in just a moment. And first, let's go to John Scott with what's coming up in the second hour of Happening Now. Hey, John.
Hey, Harris. In our next hour, more controversy over Donald Trump Jr.'s connections to Russia and the involvement of several of the president's family members, how that could be impacting his administration. Plus, terrifying moments spark a demand for answers after a young woman dials 911 for help and is gunned down by police. And a brazen kidnapping in broad daylight, how police tracked down the suspect and what she said when they slapped the cuffs on her. It's all ahead, top of the hour.
Interesting. John, thank you.
Thanks, Harris.
Melissa.
Longtime Democratic strategist James Carville casting doubts on Democrats' ability to regain the Senate in the 2018 midterm elections. Watch.
I would say we have a pretty good chance of taking the House back. The Senate is very, very difficult. I think there's a good chance, maybe 50% chance the Democrats win the House. The problem in the Senate is we have a large number of seats that we have to hold in states that Donald Trump carried.
So here are those Democratic senators that Carville was just referring to in that clip. All 10 of them are up for re-election in 2018. Democrats would need to pick up another 3 seats in order to regain control in the Senate, whereas in the House, Democrats need to flip 24 seats to get to the majority. Congressman, I'll ask you because I assume that congressional math is one of your specialties. What do you think about this?
I think it's a little too early to know what the political environment will be next year, but I would say this. I've been there for 7 months this year since Trump has been inaugurated. I've not seen the Democrats offering any new ideas, any ideas that resonate with the American people. What they basically have talked about is Russia, tax returns, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. I don't think that is going to be enough to win in states that Trump may have won 10 by 10, 15, 20 percentage points.
Yeah.
And so the lack of an agenda that I think really speaks to middle-income voters, I think will ultimately be what sinks the Democrats in 2018 in these Senate races.
All right, I mean, do you think that's true, Jessica, even though it is a midterm election, so a lot of times it is a referendum on the sitting party, so it is sort of a, is it working out or is it not working out? Do you want to respond? What do you think?
I agree completely with what the congressman said there, and James Carville's assessment. 24 seats is doable. It's still a lot of seats. The generic ballot is tilting in our favor, but I completely agree with you. This is something Joe Biden and President Obama have spoken to recently, saying we need a message here, and it has to be an economic one. And this is really, I think, one of the main reasons that we lost. No one knows what stronger together meant. Hillary Clinton's slogan. We know what make America great again means. And if we don't start messaging and doing it well and doing it in the middle of the country with all those voters who either stayed home or may have switched parties and voted for Donald Trump, we're we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I don't think we're going to.
Would you say Democrats are divided on what the message is and should be?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a really interesting discussion recently about what happened at the DNC, that our first speaker, we came out and we tackled the issue of trans rights instead of starting with an economic message. And that was seen as focusing on special interest issues versus something generally. Everyone cares about pocketbook issues.
So who rules the party?
Well, right now, I mean, we have a toss-up here. We have Bernie Sanders, still with a ton of clout, and Elizabeth Warren, who are trying to tilt the party even further left, which I think is a mistake.
So that's an economic issue.
Yes, on economic inequality. And then you have the more centrist side of the party where you have Tom Perez, and I think Barack Obama is going to get more involved in that and will be kind of more of the centrist.
Is that a good thing?
Who likes to cuss at people? Tom Perez?
He has other attributes, but yes, I believe he does use a dirty word or two, which I don't like in those settings, certainly.
But one of the issues is, I mean, when she talks about, you're asked the question kind of who's in control of the party right now, is from this vantage point, it seems like the super wealthy are. I mean, when you look at, you know, Nancy Pelosi, you know, incredibly wealthy, all the donors, incredibly wealthy from California, from New York, you really have, it's really become the party of the 1%, and then kind of the party of people that are
but you
receiving.
know what's interesting about that? I mean, President Trump has a lot of money. He's very successful.
And the Koch brothers.
It doesn't make you